Statement, the Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and with permission, I would like to make a statement on last week's European Council and the next steps in preparing to trigger Article 50 and beginning the process of leaving the European Union. The summit began by re-electing Donald Tusk as President of the European Council. I welcomed this because we have a close working relationship with President Tusk and recognise the strong contribution he has made in office. In the main business of the Council, we discussed the challenge of managing mass migration, the threats from organised crime and instability in the Western Balkans, and the measures needed to boost Europe's growth and competitiveness, which will remain important for us as we build a new relationship between the EU and a self-governing global Britain. In each case, we were able to show once again how Britain will continue to play a leading role in Europe long after we have left the European Union. First, on migration, I welcomed the progress in implementing the action plan which we had agreed at the informal EU summit in Malta last month. This included Italy strengthening asylum processes and increasing returns, and Greece working to implement the EU-Turkey deal, where the UK is providing additional staff to support interviewing of Iraqi, Afghan and Eritrean nationals. At this Council, I argued that we must do more to dismantle the vile people smuggling rings who profit from the migrants' misery and who are subjecting many to unimaginable abuses. Mr. Speaker, with coordinated and committed action, we can make a difference. Indeed, just last month, an operation between our National Crime Agency and the Hellenic Coast Guard led to the arrest of 19 members of an organised immigration crime group in Greece. As I've argued before, we need a managed, controlled and truly global approach, and that is exactly what this Council agreed. We need to help ensure refugees claim asylum in the first safe country they reach, and help those countries support the refugees so they don't have to make the perilous journey to Europe. And we need a better overall approach to managing economic migration, one which recognises that all countries have the right to control their borders. Mr. Speaker, engaging our African partners in this global approach will be crucial, and this will be an important part of the discussions at the Somalia conference, which the UK will be hosting in London in May. Turning to the deteriorating situation in the Western Balkans, I made clear my concerns about the risks this presents to the region and to our wider collective security. Organised criminals and terrorists are ready to exploit these vulnerabilities, and we are seeing increasingly brazen interference by Russia and others. In light of the alleged Montenegro coup plot, I called on the Council to do more to counter destabilising Russian disinformation campaigns and to raise the visibility of the Western commitment to this region. The UK will lead the way. The Foreign Secretary will be visiting Russia in the coming weeks, where I expect him to set out our concerns about reports of Russian interference in the affairs of the government of Montenegro. We will provide strategic communications expertise to the EU institutions to counter disinformation campaigns in the region, and we will host the 2018 Western Balkans Summit. And in the run-up to that summit, we will enhance our security cooperation with our Western Balkan partners, including on serious and organised crime, anti-corruption and cyber-security. More broadly, Mr. Speaker, I also re-emphasised the importance that the UK places on NATO as the bedrock of our collective defence. And I urged other member states to start investing more in line with NATO's target so that every country plays its full part in sharing the burden. For it is only by investing properly in our defence that we can ensure we are properly equipped to keep our people safe. Turning to growth and competitiveness, as I have said, I want us to build a new relationship with the EU that will give our companies the maximum freedom to trade with and operate in the European market and allow European businesses to do the same here. So a successful and competitive European market in the future will remain in our national interest. And at this Council, I called for further steps to complete the single market and the digital single market. I also welcomed the completion of the free trade agreement between the EU and Canada, and pressed for an agreement with Japan in the coming months. For these agreements, Yes, just wait for it. These agreements will lay the foundation for our continued trading relationships with these countries as we leave the EU. At the same time, we will also seize the opportunity to forge our own new trade deals and to reach out beyond the borders of Europe to build relationships with old friends and new allies alike. This weekend, we announced a two-day conference with the largest ever Qatari trade delegation to visit the UK, building on the £5 billion of trade we already do with Qatar every year. And we will also strengthen the unique and proud global relationships we've forged with the diverse and vibrant alliance of the Commonwealth, which we celebrated on Commonwealth Day yesterday. Finally, Mr. Speaker, last night the bill on Article 50 successfully completed its passage through both houses unchanged. It will now proceed to royal assent in the coming days, so we remain on track with the timetable I set out 6 months ago. And I will return to this House before the end of this month to notify when I have formally triggered Article 50 and begun the process through which the United Kingdom will leave the European Union. This will be a defining moment for our whole country as we begin to forge a new relationship with Europe and a new role for ourselves in the world. We will be a strong, self-governing global Britain with control once again over our borders and our laws. And we will use this moment of opportunity to build a stronger economy and a fairer society so that we secure both the right deal for Britain abroad and a better deal for ordinary working people at home. And, Mr. Speaker, the new relationship with the EU that we negotiate will work for the whole of the United Kingdom. That is why we have been working closely with involved administrations including the Scottish Government, listening to their proposals and recognising the many areas of common ground that we have, such as protecting workers' rights and our security from crime and terrorism. So, Mr. Speaker, this is not a moment to play politics or create uncertainty. It is a moment to bring our country together, to honour the will of the British people and to shape for them a better, brighter future and a better Britain. And I commend this statement to the House.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank the Prime Minister for an advanced copy of this statement. The passing into law of the EU Notification of Withdrawal Act marks an historic step. Later this month, the triggering of Article 50, a process that will shape this country's future. There is no doubt that if the wrong decisions are made, we will pay the price for decades to come. So now, more than ever, Britain needs an inclusive government that listens and acts accordingly. However, all the signs are that we have a complacent government. Complacent with our economy, complacent with people's rights, and complacent about the future of this country. I urge the Prime Minister to listen to the collective wisdom of this Parliament and to give this House the full opportunity to scrutinise the Article 50 deal with a meaningful final vote. The people's representatives, Mr. Speaker, deserve better than take it or leave it. And if we are to protect jobs and living standards, and if we are to protect the future prosperity of this country, the government needs to secure tariff-free access to the single European market. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has already made the threat to our negotiating partners to turn Britain into a deregulated tax haven. Is that what she means by global Britain? When the Foreign Secretary says no deal with the EU would be perfectly okay, it simply isn't good enough. And far from taking back control, leaving Britain to World Trade Organization rules would mean losing control, jobs and, frankly, losing out. So when the Prime Minister says a bad deal is better than no deal, let me be clear, no deal is a bad deal. Such a complacent strategy would punish business, hit jobs and devastate public services on which people rely. The Prime Minister says she is seeking to secure a future free trade deal with the EU after initial negotiations are completed. But if that is the strategy, it is essential that this government stops being complacent and focuses on securing a transitional agreement with the EU at the earliest opportunity. That would at least give the British people and businesses some short-term clarity in this period. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister said she wanted to provide certainty on EU nationals as soon as possible. So then why have they voted down every Labour attempt to bring certainty to EU nationals who make such a massive contribution to our community and our society? These people are not bargaining chips. They are mothers, fathers, wives, husbands. They are valued members of our community. The government could and should have acted months ago. I agree with the Prime Minister. Now is not the time to create uncertainty or play politics. She should tell that to the EU migrants in Britain who have no idea what their future holds because of the decisions made by her government. On refugees, is the Prime Minister saying that she is content for refugees to remain in camps in Libya? Is that a safe country? Or for Greece, Italy and Malta to shoulder the entire burden of refugees from North Africa and the Middle East? Whilst we welcome the conference she's proposing on Somalia, we need to know what support Britain is offering to all of those countries. Does the Prime Minister still believe we have a collective responsibility on the issue of refugees? The Prime Minister said that she argued about tackling vile smuggling rings and people being subject to unimaginable abuse. Does she not agree that her argument would be so much stronger if her government had been prepared to accept some of the victims of that unimaginable abuse, for example, the children who should have been accepted through the Dubs Amendment? Mr. Speaker, as we move towards the triggering of Article 50, there is much uncertainty about Britain's future. A responsible government would set a positive tone with our negotiating partners and would move to protect our economy, workers and citizens at the earliest opportunity. Instead, we have a reckless government playing fast and loose with the British economy. We will fight for jobs and the economy using every parliamentary mechanism that is available, and the government should welcome that scrutiny.
Prime Minister.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Right Honourable Gentleman mentioned a range of issues there. He spoke again about the issue of EU nationals. As I have said in this House, as has been said by others from this dispatch box in this House, we do want to ensure that the issue of the status of EU nationals who are living here in the United Kingdom is dealt with at an early stage in the negotiations, but we also have a consideration for the UK nationals who are living in the European Union. He said that the EU nationals living here are individuals who have contributed to our society. Indeed, they are. But so the UK nationals living in the member states of the European Union are also individuals who've contributed to their society and economy. And I want to ensure that their status is also ensured. And we hope and expect that this will be an issue that we can address at an early stage. He talked about the need to come forward and be very clear about the need for a transitional period. I refer him to the speech I gave in Lancaster House in January and to the white paper that we published. The need for an implementation period, so we have a smooth and orderly process of Brexit, is indeed one of the objectives that was set out in that speech and in that document. He talked about refugees from North Africa and the Middle East. What we want to ensure is that people don't feel the need to make the often dangerous, life-threatening journey across the central Mediterranean. Many of these people, more than three-quarters of the people who are doing this, are not refugees, they are economic migrants. We need to ensure that we are providing facilities and working with countries within Africa, which the European Union is itself doing, and other countries are doing, to ensure that the circumstances are such that people don't try to make a life-threatening journey. But we also need internationally to be able to bring a better distinction between refugees and economic migrants so that we can give better support to those who are refugees. He talked about vile smuggling rings and appeared to suggest that the United Kingdom government was doing absolutely nothing to break the vile smuggling rings. In my statement, I quoted a very recent example of the work of the National Crime Agency, which I might say it is a Conservative-led government that set up the National Crime Agency, that set up the Organised Immigration Crime Task Force, and that is dealing with these issues. And while he talks about abuses and the movement of people and the trafficking of people, it is this government that brought in the Modern Slavery Act, and I'm very proud that it's this government that did it. And finally, he referred to global Britain, what global Britain means. Well, I'll tell him what global Britain means. It's about a strong, self-governing Britain. It's about a Britain that is trading around the world with old friends and new allies alike. And it's about a Britain that is proud to take its place on the world stage.
We will make America great again.